Ramirez of the Catch Wrestling Alliance. We're here to help you elevate your grappling, and together we keep real wrestling alive. Thank you very much for joining us, no matter where you get your podcast, whether it be YouTube or Twitch or any kind of podcast app. We should be there. At least we're trying to make sure that we're on all the podcast apps. So yeah, even on like these like Audible and like all these other ones, it's we should be on all these random ones that you might use. So if you're listening on all these other apps, appreciate just giving the listen and stuff. So thanks. Also too, we just finished a very successful summer session at UCLA. Everything seems to be growing with regards to catch wrestling and also the kickboxing that I teach. So it's called Sanda, or it's Chinese kickboxing. So that's like Muay Thai, but with a lot more takedowns. Um, so that will just continue again in the fall at UCLA. So if there are any UCLA students, consider attending, because it's part of the gym there. So go for it. We also continue with our courses at Fight Science MMA. That is in Mid-City, Los Angeles. So it's kind of like right in the middle of the city. That's probably why they call it Mid-City, but it should be easy to locate. Just if you just do like a Google Map search or whatever, you should be able to find us. Right? And you can do like a drop-in fee, and you don't have to join the gym or anything to take the class. So feel free to check it out. All right. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the subject here. So recently, or actually just a couple days ago, was it Sunday night, Gordan Ryan had a match with Felipe Pena. He like, sorry to spoil it, I'm sure you probably at least heard, right? So Gordan Ryan won that match, but basically he didn't necessarily he didn't submit Pena, but Pena gave up, right? After it was over 40 minutes of grappling back and forth. I didn't think anybody was like particularly dominant or whatever, but I want to play what I think is the most important aspect that I think we really want to share with everyone. It's not the match itself, it's not the technique itself, but what was being said by Gordan Ryan in the pre-match press conference. And then also I want to back that up, or at least add more from Gordan Ryan's coach, John Danaher, talking about the same subject, right? So let's go ahead and play the video here from Gordan at the press conference. Okay, so here we go.
Yeah, so Gordan, he just said that he's basically better than you everywhere except for leg locks, and you're stronger than him. What do you have to say to that?
Well, I'm definitely stronger than him, and the only thing he's better at is losing. That's about it. If he tries to stand with me, he'll get exhausted. If he plays top position, he's going to get swept. And if he plays bottom position, I'm going to run past his guard and then just pin him helplessly, chest to chest, for as long as I want, and then let him out of there when he's ready.
All right, so main thing that I want you to get from that is the whole idea where Gordan says that he will he'll pin Pena chest to chest. If he tries to play guard or whatever, he'll control him until he chooses to let him out to finish him off, right? So again, he's emphasizing the importance of controlling the person. And it's just like in wrestling, we talk about control and like pinning someone, but I think ultimately, and it's over the years we've seen all these comments on our social media where people they think pins are worthless or whatever, which couldn't be any further from the truth, especially since mainstream jiu-jitsu grapplers, especially the most, like some at the most highest levels of the game, like Gordan Ryan and John Danaher, are really emphasizing the importance of pins, right, and the value of pins, right? So what I'm going to read is actually probably should have done a screenshot and shared it with you, but this is from John Danaher's social media, and it was I don't have the date of it. It was just within the past 2 or 3 weeks. But let me go ahead and talk about, or I'll read it for you. And the idea is that John Danaher is talking about the notion of control and controlling your opponent. And so let's go ahead and just read it. If you can control your opponent's movement, you can control the game. Moving targets are hard to hit. When you can stick an opponent in place and immobilize them, you can hit him with a submission hold at will. What makes the ground game so interesting is that the floor limits the means and methods by which we can move into a few predictable patterns. Once you learn those patterns, you can learn to shut them down. And if you can shut down movement while you are still able to move yourself, you can finish anyone. Right? When you grapple, focus less on trying to perform moves and more on learning how people move on the ground and how you can interfere with that. Then all the moves you were previously focused upon become considerably easier. So he doesn't use the word pin so much, or like he doesn't use the word pin at all in that in that like his caption, right? But it is there, and I think people have to, in a way, like don't think of pins necessarily so much of just only having the person's shoulder onto the mat, but you can also think of pinning down, someone's, let's say, like legs to the mat, and then you can then move around their legs. And if you're in a no gi situation, or even in a gi situation, whatever, a jiu-jitsu situation, you can then move around these points that you've pinned down, and then you can say pass guard or set up your leg lock, set up other types of submission holds. One thing I'd like to add, though, that would be more of a catch wrestling perspective. We don't necessarily consider the submission holds submission holds. We would just call them wrestling holds, because they can end up in a submission, but you can also end up pinning someone, say like with the double wrist lock or whatever, or even a key lock, which is considered like a bicep slicer in modern jiu-jitsu. It was not considered a submission hold. It was considered a hold where you can then pin somebody, right? So you'd get control of them, especially the upper body, and then you would more easily be able to pin them. All right, uh, so there. All right. So that's kind of like my two main points. It seems like people are already kind of commenting. So why don't we go ahead and like see what people are saying? Eileen gets good. All right. Actually, we kind of chatted earlier this week. So all right, let's see what you have to say. So welcome. Thank you for commenting. Eileen gets good. I was rolling with some jiu-jitsu guys a few months ago and was holding my own pretty good, but then I got smashed by a judoka who was able to control me because of the pin. So that's a really great example, because judo, one way to win in judo is actually to pin someone down for, I think it's like 20 seconds or something like that. So if you can kind of like hold them down, keep them from moving or escaping, then you win. So I don't know all the details of the judo pin so much, but at least that is in the kind of like the judo rule set. So it is in the mind of a lot of judo practitioners. So they're going to be implementing that. And if you're not familiar with that, then yeah, you're going to get held down and you can get submitted, or you can just gas out and quit. So that's kind of ultimately what happened with Felipe Pena in the match against Gordan Ryan, that after 40 minutes, he then gave up. All right. Maceo El Morro. Mario Sperry's Valetudo 2 series shows how to do BJ-style pins. I was pinning purple and browns, and it took them forever to get free, and I was a white blue belt. So thank you for commenting, Maceo El Morro. Yeah, it's kind of like all just more evidence to kind of like proving the point where, yeah, I agree with John Danaher, and then you can see with the attitude of Gordan Ryan, just so like thinking of the pin as a way to win, right? So it's making him confident because he not only is like he knows the submission holds, but he also kind of knows how to set them up so that you get that pin, you get the control over the person's body, then you can ultimately find a way to execute your submission hold, right? Or we in catch wrestling we would more likely just say a wrestling hold, right? Because sometimes a toe hold isn't necessarily to submit the person; it's more like you're twisting the foot ankle to get someone to roll over so you can pin them, right? Especially if they're kind of like in what people would say turtle, right? In jiu-jitsu, if you want them to roll over, a lot of times you can start cranking their ankle, and then they will roll over to relieve the pain. So you end up pinning them, right? So it isn't necessarily the submission that you get, but you end up winning by pin, right? So these are the things that are kind of different from authentic catch wrestling, as opposed to maybe say like what people are seeing in mainstream catch wrestling, where you see people doing all these like lock flow stuff, or these weird things where it's like they're equating catch wrestling with only being like this submission art, right? So ultimately, catch wrestling is a wrestling art with submission hold, or it's cognizant of the submission hold, and we tend to apply these holds in a little bit different way than you would see in jiu-jitsu and judo. So there has to, I guess, that distinction just I have to kind of emphasize it again a bit, because I think people just get kind of confused, especially if they're seeing all these kinds of weird things online. And so you get a lot of people just trying to make it seem like what it isn't. Okay, so Eileen gets good. So in catch, submissions can function also as a pain compliance technique to force a certain reaction from the opponent, like a crossface in folk style. Um, yeah, I wish I could show you a crossface, because yeah, even our crossface would be different compared to from catch wrestling to folk style. The crossface in catch wrestling is again designed not only to block someone, but to you can also end up neck cranking them, right? So which should be able to get you even more control over the opponent. So instead of just broadly putting your arm across their face, you actually would almost like excuse me, you'd almost like use your knuckles to force, like punch them and force them to turn their head, and you can set up face locks, um, which ultimately could be a submission, or you can just make them like roll over. Sorry, one second. Swallowed my COVID's acting. I'm just gonna the saliva went down the wrong pipe there. Yeah, so like the catch wrestling crossface, it is a thing, but I don't think it is the same thing as like a amateur wrestling or even a jiu-jitsu. I've heard some people using the word crossface in jiu-jitsu. I've been in jiu-jitsu a long time, as I hear all these weird things, weird terminology. So like sometimes they're calling like putting your arm around the back of their head like a crossface. They were using that in a really popular jiu-jitsu gym that I was working at, and I was like, so bizarre. But um yes, a lot of times so going back to your point, Eileen, some like the pain compliance aspect, yes, that is a lot of times to get the person to move and potentially to set up a pin, right? There have been like people who were scared, say like with regards to one of our most famous catch wrestlers in history, Frank Gotch. He or people feared his toe hold, and so that's kind of according to like the lore about his famous match with Hackenschmidt. Hackenschmidt was scared of like getting his ankle broken or whatever, but Frank Gotch really won more by pin than ever, like submitting people with the toe hold. But he was good at controlling people by twisting their ankles. So to kind of put that into uh, like a folk style scenario, you really can't do those. You can't do like toe holds and stuff. But you can't really do even double wrist locks very. Yeah, I don't. You can do bar arms, or kind of like chicken wing stuff, where you can bring their arm behind their back. It can't go, their hand can't go too far up their back, but you can snake your arm through, right, and then use that to push them over so that you pin them. But I'd say, like, if you did like more of a no-gi scenario, right, especially if you don't have catch wrestling around you, or if you don't have open-minded wrestling partners that are open to trying some of these holds, or letting you try some of these holds, then um, I'd say maybe try it on your like no-gi friends, because then you can see where it's like, especially if it's someone who's really good, you then can see how they're going to try to escape, right? Because you even like getting like so if you have a friend who's really good at leg locks, right? Chances are they might already know several ways to escape your average toe hold, right? So then you can use these types of holds to get them to feel uncomfortable enough to try to escape, and then you can set up a counter, right? So it doesn't mean that you'll set up a counter leg lock or whatever, but you could set up like because quite often I'll have someone around my back with their hooks in, and then I'll do a toe hold. Grabbing their foot that's in, like one of the hooks that's in, and you start pulling on that. Quite often you can get the submission, but if I roll with several people who really specialize in leg locks and stuff, so they'll start moving, trying to squirm out, or they'll try to set up some kind of counter thing, and sometimes you can just use your toe hold attempt to get out of like having them on your back, right? So you can use that. They start squirming around, you can throw their leg over, and then now they're like in turtle and you're on their back. It can be really dynamic in that way. Eileen gets good. Yeah, chicken wing or a bow and arrow are the only other things that I can think of. All right, Maceo El Morro. Learning pins are essential for self-defense, especially if you don't want to hurt the other person. Really good point, Maceo. So yeah, that's the other thing about self-defense. I think people don't quite understand. So it's good that you brought it up, because ultimately self-defense isn't like beating up someone who's attacked you. It's about really either controlling them, right? And keeping them from attacking you further, or kind of deflecting their attack enough so that you can escape, right? So you can create more distance. But you like if it's a scenario where you think that self-defense is then like overpowering someone who's attacked you and then beating them up in return, then you can find yourself in court, right? So you can the person that who attacked you first might end up taking you to court because you hurt them, which is seems absurd, but that's ultimately the law. The way the law works is that you can only meet them with kind of equal force, and once you kind of get an advantage, you really can't continue hurting them, or basically you have to kind of stop, and otherwise you then become the assailant, right? You then become the criminal. So that's a really good point to bring up. Because say like in wrestling or even all kinds of martial arts, I think one of the big examples is kickboxing, where it's like you're being taught all these ways to like knee someone, elbow someone, punch and kick someone. So if someone were to attack you and you use some of these techniques, and maybe they fall down and you're still standing, and if you continue to kick the person or kick them in the head repeatedly or whatever, then you start you've gone beyond what would be considered acceptable self-defense, right? So it's always a good thing to bring up, yeah, because people's mindsets or people's understanding of what is like self-defense is not quite with like it doesn't quite match up with what the law views as self-defense. And this type of understanding is like pretty universal around the world, in all these countries around the world. You really can't just go around beating people up because you think they attacked you or whatever, or even if they do attack you to try to hurt you, you can't really uh, hurt them too bad. But going back to kind of like the main idea, right? So Maseo kind of brought it up where it's like pins are very essential for not only being successful in grappling, but also being successful in self-defense as well. So it's really cool that you made that connection. Yeah, or was it Noach? Right. So you came over, right? You came to train with us a few weeks ago, right? Yeah. So he said you can also get a good lawyer, right? So, but you never know if you can. Lawyers can be very expensive, or you might not know one. But yeah, chances, if you don't have a good lawyer, then good luck. Right. So let's go ahead and kind of go back to this idea where I kind of want to reiterate what John Danaher said. So let's go ahead and reread it for you, especially for those of you who maybe missed that part. Okay, so going back to the whole idea of control, and then you can think of this as the idea or the explanation as to why pins are important. So here we go. If you can control an opponent's movement, you control the game. Moving targets are hard to hit. When you can stick an opponent in place and immobilize him, you can hit him with a submission hold at will. What makes the ground game so interesting is that the floor limits the means and methods by which we can move into a few predictable patterns. Once you learn those patterns, you can learn to shut them down. And if you can shut down movement while still able to move yourself, you can finish anyone. When you grapple, focus less on trying to perform moves and more on learning how people move on the ground and how you can interfere with that. And then all the moves you were previously focused upon become considerably easier. All right. So, I guess we kind of want to touch on some of like one more aspect that he mentioned there. So besides the pins, you can think about like the different positions that people will usually get into. So say if you're in a jiu-jitsu situation and it's okay to be on your back, then you want to be aware of like kind of like their counterattacks, like the shrimp, right? The shrimping position or the shrimping movement, but also even like some counter. People are doing kind of like counter berimbolo type moves. So in a way, it's kind of good to be a student of the game to kind of understand how people move in certain positions, but then start thinking of it like more simply, where it's like if they're on their back, a lot of times they might just be throwing up their legs, hoping for a triangle or setting up an arm bar or something like that, right? So once you're aware of kind of like the main counterattacks from different positions, then you'll understand kind of how they might counterattack, and then you can then work on using your pins or to shut that down, right? To shut down those counters, right? And also you can kind of work on kind of like keeping that kind of downward pressure, even if the person is belly down, like in turtle or a referee's position. Then you can start pinning them down. A lot of time, one of the ways to more successfully keep someone from moving, especially if they're belly down, like in turtle, a lot of times is putting that downward pinning pressure on their head, right? Then you can kind of better sense how they're moving or when they're going to move. And you can kind of let it happen, or you can, you can kind of let it happen by relieving pressure. Then you'll start feeling how they're going to move, and you should be able to like kind of set up a counter, or at least understand kind of which way they're going, and see if you can't set up a counter by gauging on what you're feeling. Maceo El Morro. Do you feel this new generation of BJJ practitioners are more open to catch and other styles of grappling, and conversely are catch and other wrestlers going into BJJ to learn? I foresee hybridization. Well, I think there's already been like kind of like hybridization in a way, but I think ultimately it's been by people who'd never really learned like like almost like pure catch. So it always seems to be like people who come more from a jiu-jitsu background or a judo background. They're taking some of the holds or some of the moves that they've seen that are associated with pro wrestling and catch wrestling, and then they try to put it into their thing, and then they call it some kind of hybrid or some kind of mix of things. So we'll see what happens. Ultimately, since jiu-jitsu is very popular, and especially nogi, I think is getting really popular with like ADCC getting bigger and bigger. A lot of say like even the match that I was talking about with Gordon Ryan and whatnot, like you have like flow grappling and all these organizations doing more and more nogi competitions. So there are definitely going to be places for them to compete. So what that means is that you might not necessarily be wrestling where you can win by pin, but the pin is still going to be very valuable, right? The pinning ability is going to be a very valuable ability to have in your repertoire. Eileen gets good. I could see Catch and BJJ coexisting on the same card as different rule sets like kickboxing and Muay Thai, and there will likely be lots of people that compete in both. That would be a very, very nice future, right? So, but yeah, like when you look at one championship in Singapore, I know I often bring up one championship just because it's it's almost kind of refreshing, right? Because a lot of times they spend time building up their talent. They make really cool promo videos for a lot of the athletes and stuff, and they're not just tearing down people. So anyway, so in their cards, right? So in one night of fights, you will see what Eileen was describing. You'll see MMA rules matches, kickboxing matches, Muay Thai matches, and now they've added grappling matches. So that is really cool because it's no gi, but it is. I think it's only like a 10-minute match or something like that. But it is submission only. But yeah, if the match goes the full distance, there is no like overtime. So like there's no like EBI overtime, or there's no real overtime. It just gets judged based on who's most dominant. So so it's good that that came out too, right? So thanks for bringing that up, Eileen, because the thing about that is that again, the pin can help you to win these matches, right? It can help you to win submission only matches if they're done like what I think it's like not only one championship, but I believe like Fight to Win and a few other and even like Flow Grappling. I think who's number one and all that. They don't really do overtime stuff, right? So the match, no matter how long it is, whether it's like 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes, you will like at the end of it, you will get judged based off of your dominance, really, like who tried more submission attempts and whatnot, or who was on top most. And I'd kind of like to say like what Kennedy Maciel from Cobrina's son, actually. I believe so. Even though, because I spent a lot of time at that school, so I didn't, it's really a gi heavy school, but Kennedy's still able to do well in no-gi competition. And it seems as though it's because he is trying to stay on top. He is trying to kind of like keep that downward pressure on people. He's able to pass their guard, stay on top, and even if he doesn't submit somebody, they've been giving him a lot of wins on flow grappling. I think it's because of that whole pinning idea. So even if he doesn't finish them off, he still keeps them immobilized, kind of like how John Danaher was describing. Maybe not able to get the submission, but still controlling the match, showing the domination, and the judges award him the match, right, and award him the win. Right? Noah, hybridization won't keep catch alive. People don't know what it is till you train with a legit coach, I feel. Yeah, that's quite often the case. So that's a good point. And that's why I don't know. It's a video that's here on YouTube. So it's this really cool one that came out, several years ago, where they they take a lot of really cool black and white footage from the Snake Pit Wigan, and they have Roy, the Roy Wood, the coach there, just kind of talking about like his thoughts on the old days training and whatnot. And one of the things he states that really stuck with me was, there are a lot of things that people are calling catch nowadays that I would never consider it to be catch. Right? So, yeah, there was a way things were done, and even though there were a lot of pins and submissions, there was still a lot of the wrestling aspect. And so, I think ultimately what Noah is saying is the whole idea of like it would be ideal for people to, in order to preserve catch wrestling and to keep real like my keep real wrestling alive, is that yeah, we do have to have people who are who can become experts in the actual art. So it's like becoming an expert in speaking English or becoming an expert in speaking French or these other languages. And if you can, so then you can see where these hybridizations occur, where you get these borrowed techniques or whatever from other languages and whatnot. But you still have to kind of keep the one language, as you know, knowing the one thing, and you can keep these kind of separate, and yeah, they can all play, they can all have matches on the same night, right? Like MMA matches, jiu-jitsu, like no-gi, you know, submission only matches, catch wrestling matches, whatnot. That'd be a really cool idea. Let me see. Maceo El Morro. I'd love to see catch and sambo guys compete at the highest levels of ADCC and other grappling. That would be so awesome. Yes, yes. Actually, I do kind of. I do like the ADCC rule set for the most part. Like especially if you know the whole no points for a while. I think they add the points ultimately to, you know, kind of to make sure the match ends. You know, if just in case someone doesn't get a submission during the match, maybe they can win by a point or something. But yeah, yeah, and it seems as though the focus is going more towards this whole nogi submission only approach. So, and then ADCC seems to be kind of like at the like the vanguard of that, where it is like what people are looking to more and more. At least based on, this is my opinion. So this is based off of what I'm seeing when I go online. I do still see like some like highlights from gi matches and whatnot, but even on like flow grappling and stuff, but I'm seeing less and less, even, you know, on flow grappling, which is, you know, they will air like the IBJJF stuff. And you even see like one of my acquaintances, she's a really good professional jiu-jitsu practitioner. She's really heavy into gi stuff, but now she competed at ADCC and has been doing more and more no gi stuff. So you can see her. She's in Southern California also, Tata Ribeiro. So you can find her on Instagram and stuff. So she's, I think she's also kind of like transitioning to, or there's people that are kind of like maybe who are focused on gi, and then they're maybe trying to transition, make, say like Kennedy Maciel, you know, they're trying to do these transitions into no-gi. Drew Galbraith. It's a way to spread catch, though. I have a foundation in catch, but now I train in another style too. Catch needs to work with others for them to see its effectiveness. All right. Yeah, so yeah, that's why I think that you can still be very effective, say like in ADCC and whatnot, by using this whole idea of pins and to kind of control the person, right? Noah, what we need is more people to train catch and compete. Not enough catch guys training much yet competing. It doesn't make sense to train a BJJ guy catch and expect him to wrestle like a catch guy. And I can't remember who. Oh, actually, just a few weeks ago, one of the interviews that I did, with one of the Wigan wrestlers. I can't remember. Could have been, yeah, I think it was Marcus Whitehead. You can look back in on our YouTube channel for that live stream that we did. But yeah, he was kind of talking about that, where it's like, you know, you get a lot of people nowadays, especially from a jiu-jitsu or just a non-catch wrestling background, claiming to know catch wrestling or to be a catch wrestler, but what they've ultimately done, or it comes out really quickly, is that they've just maybe learned a few submission holds, and then they think that they're a catch wrestler, and so when they go to compete, like in Wigan, they get pinned, right? Because they go up against someone who's used to actually wrestling, and they realize that just you're not always going to get that submission hold right off the bat, and sometimes you can try for a submission hold, but then if you get rolled onto your back and you're not able to complete the submission hold, you've just pinned yourself. So and also one of the other things is like catch wrestling itself. This also comes from one of the other interview I did with Robbie Ward a few weeks ago, also a Wigan wrestler. Is that catch wrestling is exciting just by itself. So kind of going back to what Noah was saying, I mean, yeah, if we can continue training people in catch wrestling, I mean, it's exciting just by itself. I mean, it'd be great to grow it to the point where if someone doesn't want to compete in ADCC or whatever, that they shouldn't have to, right? You got people competing in basketball, they're not having to compete in baseball or football or whatever they're not having to do it, because if their passion is whatever, like basketball, then they can do that, right? Let me see. Well, you guys are making a lot of comments. Let me scroll back a little bit. Eileen, what do you think needs to happen for catch to see a similar level of success to BJJ, or more online exposure, more pure catch guys winning, and other rule sets? I think a lot of times it could be having kind of going also to what Noah was saying and what I was just talking about with my conversation with Robbie Ward, was that if we can actually have good catch wrestling matches and well produced, basically catch wrestling matches, I think that could be one thing that will help it to grow without even having to compete in ADCC or other kinds of, or even in gi or whatever. That could be successful even without having to. I think a lot of times people bring up MMA or whatever. That might not even be necessary if we keep putting on a good show, then that really can help it to grow, because it's very easy for people to understand. Let me see. Noah, the problem right now is that the talent pool is too small to get a legit representative at the highest levels when not enough people are training the art. Eileen gets good. Then maybe more people teaching and opening gyms or teaching catch at BJJ gyms. Just spitballing. Well, I teach at MMA gym. I'm at Fight Science MMA. Yeah. And then Noah says, yeah, we need students to learn so that they can spread the art also. Then Noah says, having guys call themselves catch and you see them pulling guard is hurting the sport. Yeah, I agree. Maceo, I always keep hearing that catch guys can't fight off their back because they don't believe in using guard. So with pinning, can learning BJJ guard help with fighting off the pin? Well, I think ultimately it's that's like a fallacy, right? It's not true that people can't fight off the back, but a lot of times they're going to counter you in a different way than just like staying like with their chest to chest there. So they wouldn't necessarily be fighting like this, but a lot of times, actually, even a lot of my videos, right? I did a video series like catch wrestling from the bottom or whatever, where we show a lot of counter moves to if someone does start rolling you onto your back, how to turn and take them with you so you end up on top, or you can turn and get out, right? So almost like and maybe you guys would know more in in the jiu-jitsu terminology, like that ghost move where someone is like kind of pinning you down in side control. There's all these different ways to slide out and then end up back on top, or at least out from underneath the person, right? So it isn't necessarily you're going to see a catch person only doing like trying to do a counter triangle or trying to do a counter arm bar from the bottom or counter double wrist lock from the bottom. But it's just their counter is going to be different than that. Let me see. Let me scroll back a little bit. Yeah, it's really cool. You guys are really commenting. So it's cool that I have to scroll back here. Let me see. All right. Drew Galbraith. Foster potential coaches to continue catch. There is a major shortage of coaches. 100% agree. Henry Lopez. And Henry was in our video from earlier this week. Hopefully you guys saw that. So that kind of shows an idea of actually potentially even like it starts from someone or like, well, in the video it's me, right? So I'm if Henry takes me down and I'm underneath, how I try to go for a double wrist lock and how he can counter, and then knowing the different types of counters from different positions can help you maintain your double wrist lock and see if you can't finish it, right? Either with a pin or a submission. So that's our video from earlier this week. But anyway, getting back to Henry's comment, Jiu-Jitsu has evolved and is, in my opinion, very different now from the original art form. It's evolved so much that it's called BJJ, but is it? Now, no-gi is indistinguishable probably from the original Jiu-Jitsu. Yeah, especially with the whole gi and stuff too. And a lot of times, like even what the Gracie family was saying is that like they believe that like a lot of the martial art or self-defense aspect is gone too, right? That's one of the things that Rose Gracie was talking about, or how she felt with the way modern jiu-jitsu is going. So then she basically took the Eddie Bravo invitational rules and she puts on tournaments. So the Gracie regionals, Gracie nationals. So, good on her because, so she feels kind of along that, I think along those lines, Henry. So, so in a way it's like maybe the whole idea of sport jiu-jitsu kind of maybe just took over. And so we have some people even in the jiu-jitsu community kind of feeling that way and then trying to have this mix where it's like you can still kind of have the martial self-defense aspect and the sport aspect. Noah, learn to bridge and get off the back. Catch has a way to deal with that. Correct. Henry, but could catch evolve in a way that can still be called catch? Not sure. Yeah, I would say it's like I would never get rid of the pin, right? And again, so like we're seeing the value of pins, so even it's so valuable that even mainstream like big time jiu-jitsu gurus are really well respected jiu-jitsu practitioners and coaches are talking about it, right? So you got John Danaher talking about it, you got Gordan Ryan talking about it in his match. So actually we might as well, so let me get back to your comments, but let's go ahead and just show you that one clip first where Gordan Ryan in the pre-match press conference mentions pins, right? And how it's gonna, how he's gonna use them in his match.
Yeah, so Gordan, he just said that he's basically better than you everywhere except for leg locks, and you're stronger than him. What do you have to say to that?
Well, I'm definitely stronger than him, and the only thing he's better at is losing. That's about it. If he tries to stand with me, he'll get exhausted. If he plays top position, he's going to get swept. And if he plays bottom position, I'm going to run past his guard and then just pin him helplessly, chest to chest, for as long as I want, and then let him out of there when he's ready.
All right. So we have a special guest, my cat. Yeah, he's awake. Right. So okay, let's go ahead and get back to your comments here. But at least you can see like the attitude, right? It's almost like the whole idea of pinning is even giving Gordan Ryan more confidence, right? Because he knows that he'll be able to pin Felipe and maybe get him to quit or allow him to move when Gordan is ready for him to move, right? All right. Let me see. Noah, you can pull guard and play open guard, but that's not exactly catch wrestling. Yeah, exactly. you can see maybe some ideas or some semblance of what was now called like a butterfly guard, kind of we call that nowadays in some of the old collegiate wrestling matches where they would still try to do like, or I think in wrestling we call them like more elevator kind of techniques that they resemble what people nowadays call butterfly and stuff, butterfly guard. Eileen, do you think catch should include chokes in its rule set? I know historically chokes were outlawed, but since they've become so commonplace in other arts, should catch embrace them? Just curious. No, I think it. Well, let me tell you one story real quick. So I used to. I went to um, Arkansas to train with the late Billy Robinson, right? And one of the things he told me or he requested of me was that like that I never include chokes in our events, right? In our matches, right? And there's another thing that is done in Wigan, right? And basically like the old timers. So it's like my good buddy on the East Coast, John Strickland, he even says that his coach, Billy Wicks, did not teach chokes, right? So but so with that being said, actually I want to add one more thing. So even was it Frank Gotch talked about like how he'd won an early grappling match in his before he met Farmer Burns, who taught him actual or like authentic catch wrestling. And so even Frank Gotch was saying like, oh, to say that I won a match by a choke is like not anything I'm proud of. And I finally learned the real thing once I met Farmer Burns and whatnot. But with that being said, no, like so even so, I train at a 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu gym here in LA, and I think it was funny because recently the coach there has been trying to teach people alternatives to chokes, right? Because what's happening in jiu-jitsu or what's happened in jiu-jitsu is like the emphasis is on the choke so much that they almost like leave, or people who are really good at defending chokes, like they're able, like a match will end without a submission because the person wasn't able to finish a choke. But so like in catch wrestling, we offer so many alternatives to chokes, right? Or even the neck crank is just an amazing alternative where you can get a submission victory very fast because you can really hurt somebody using these neck cranks and stuff. So really, I mean, we, even though like the choke is like so prominent in other styles and whatnot, we don't necessarily have to just do what they're doing. Maceo El Morro. Yeah, Gordan Ryan is the best crap talker ever. At this point, I wouldn't be surprised if Gordan and Danaher went to Dagestan to train with Khabib and learn what they could just so that he can broaden his arsenal. It's about winning. Yeah. I mean, if people are like, because people are really inspired by Khabib and whatnot, so they might start looking into their version of wrestling and submission grappling. Yeah. All right, we'll go ahead and keep talking. But yeah, I think like I think if we continue ultimately to have authentic matches that are really interesting and exciting, I think people are that's kind of what we I think nowadays kind of need. Um, I think a lot more people have heard of at least the terminology or the term catch wrestling. So I think we just got to keep growing it. Like even what Noah was saying, if we keep getting more practitioners, or what Drew was saying about having more coaches and whatnot, um, that can ultimately grow the sport. Eileen, when it comes to pins, how was the 2-second pin decided on? Was the 3 seconds too long? The 2 seconds was what is done in Wigan. 3 seconds is more like what's kind of been around for pro wrestling, right? Because then they can make a big show of it, right? They can pound on the mat like 1, too, and it's all part of the show. But like you don't necessarily you don't see that in Olympics, Olympic freestyle and whatnot. So you really like the ref really shouldn't be doing that. But it's part of the pro wrestling show. And I think we've kind of come to think of that as being wrestling. But yeah. Yeah, three. Yeah, Eileen. True, three is a more entertaining number. Yeah. So yeah, they use that. They use that as like you can build up the drama, right? Is the person going to get out or not? And then yeah, they kick out. So, but yeah, the ref really isn't supposed to be like signaling that you're pinned because they have to just let the match happen. All right. So with that being said, like, I mean, I think we've had a productive meeting, ladies and gentlemen. um, so I think I think you're right about like we got to really build up the amount of like practitioners and coaches. So if anybody happens to be in LA or near LA, feel free to come train at Fight Science MMA. We also, my buddy on the East Coast, John Strickland with American Hook Wrestling. He's over there in South Carolina. We also have the online Catch Wrestling Alliance Academy that you can learn online, and then you can feel free to ask any questions that you have at any time. Just you can shoot me a message. Or with Noah here, he drove from Texas right to train with us, so no one has an excuse, right? Because we got people driving all the way from across the United States to train. Then no one else has an excuse. Um, Speaking of that, he has a comment here. They used to have chokes. They were called strangles or throttles, I believe, which are blood chokes. Correct me if I'm wrong. The sleeper hold was used in holds and barred. So when we're talking about there is kind of a mix where the whole idea, say like around 1850s, that's when they tried to standardize catch wrestling. And so again, it was much more of a wrestling style, pinning emphasized style. And that's when other, say like chokes and stuff, were officially barred. And that's kind of how it remained, because chokes in particular aren't necessarily showing enough dominance, right? So if you can neck crank somebody and get them to move, that shows much more control over the body. Also, many people at that time felt that someone could accidentally find themselves in a choke, and it didn't necessarily show a higher level of skill, right? So then that was kind of echoed in Earl Caddock, who was a catch wrestling champion who taught wrestling at West Point, and he was quoted in an interview stating like the way he can tell of all the cadets and stuff who are wrestling, he's like, the way I can tell that they are like they're green. His terminology was green. So the way you can tell a green wrestler was they're trying to choke everybody, right? So that's kind of the way it's been considered, right? So Noah here, he comes on, or he says, he continues with his comment saying like, there's a video of Danny Hodge showing a sleeper hold on YouTube. Yes, so a lot of times these sleepers are usually arm in. So it doesn't mean that like catch wrestling doesn't necessarily have a lot of compression or kind of like choke aspect to your neck and stuff, but you can't necessarily just like have someone in like a guillotine or a rear naked choke. All right. Maceo El Morro, are you available for seminars? Yes. We just haven't done any really since COVID. But yeah, we were always going to like Singapore or even different parts of the country, of the United States. But yeah, we're open to it. Eileen, I'm planning on coming down from Oregon one of these days. Yeah, really appreciate it. And then looks like you just became a member. Oh, thank you. We have a lot of, so with that being said, we have a lot of videos that people can watch on if you become a member on our YouTube channel. So we have alternate endings from some videos. We have like a demo that we did in the home of Frank Gotch. That's Humboldt, Iowa. We have a bunch of other things, and we just try to continue to add more. So you can feel free to become a member there just by clicking on the video, or on the button below all of our videos. So yes, thank you, Eileen. We really appreciate that. So also, if someone wants to join so if you don't want to, like, say, join the academy or learn, then if becoming a member in any way, because we also have like the first tier, the lowest tier is like just like it's like a couple bucks, so you can just help out, and so all that is appreciated. So whatever support you can give is great. All right. Maseo, I've got a Sambo judo guy here in Florida. I'm going to tell him about you. I think it would be advantageous. Oh, great. Yeah, I agree. I agree, Maseo. Yeah, it'd be great if you guys were in Southern California, or I guess if I was in Florida or whatever, but it'd be great to meet you guys one day. Yeah. Okay, so we'll go ahead and sign off for today. Thank you again. Thank you, Eileen, for becoming a member. Thanks to all members of our channel, and it's all through our YouTube channel. So, but yeah, if there's anything else you guys like to talk about, hopefully we kind of gave a good sense of the importance of pins and how like they're even kind of being utilized in mainstream no-gi jiu-jitsu, where pins are not a way to win, but or at least you wouldn't win by pinning someone down for 2 to 3 seconds, but you can ultimately get a win by pinning someone and controlling them, right? So something to think about. So thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time. So hopefully we can help you elevate your grappling, and together we can keep real wrestling alive.